You know that moment when the police knock on your door at sunrise and tell you you're being cited for aesthetic terrorism because of your backyard vegetable garden? Yeah. That was my Tuesday. But the real plot twist? The woman who sicked them on me had no clue she was living in a house I owned. The morning sun was already baking the cul-de-sacs of Sunnyvale Estates when the squad car rolled up. I stood there in my robe, coffee in hand, staring at two officers who looked more embarrassed than I felt. Officer Ramirez cleared his throat. Mr. Hale. We received a complaint about unauthorized structures and potential health code violations on your property. I blinked. My tomatoes? Ma'am says they're attracting rodents and lowering property values, the younger cop muttered, already writing nothing on his notepad. Across the street, Vanessa Whitaker, president of the Sunnyvale Estates HOA, stood on her perfectly manicured lawn in a pastel pink pantsuit, arms crossed, looking like she'd just caught me sacrificing goats in the driveway. Welcome to paradise. I'd moved into my late uncle's place 6 months earlier after a brutal divorce and a layoff that hit like a freight train. Sunnyvale Estates looked like the American dream on Zillow, neat rows of beige stucco homes, palm trees that never dropped leaves, and a community pool that sparkled like it was photoshopped. I thought I was buying peace. What I actually bought was a front row seat to one woman's personal fiefdom. Vanessa had introduced herself the first week with a basket of gluten-free muffins and the smile of a shark wearing lipstick. Jordan. Sweetie. We're so thrilled to have fresh blood, new neighbors. Just a quick heads up, we take our covenants very seriously here. For the harmony of the community. Of course. Harmony. That word would haunt me. The first violation notice arrived taped to my door like a ransom note. Excessive foliage and unapproved agricultural activity. My 4 tomato plants in a sad little herb bed were apparently destroying the neighborhood's curb appeal. Fine, $250. Pay within 10 days or it doubles. I laughed it off at first. Big mistake. Within a week, the rumors started. At the community mailbox, I overheard Mrs. Delgado whispering to her friend, "He's always alone in that backyard, probably growing something he shouldn't." Vanessa had been busy. By the time the second notice came, this one from my unsightly recycling bins left out 30 minutes too long, the whole street thought I was either a drug dealer or a serial killer who liked basil. I didn't fight back. Not yet. I smiled, nodded, and quietly started taking notes. Because here's what Vanessa didn't know, 20 years in IT had taught me one thing: people who abuse power always leave a trail of sloppy data. I started with the public records. Turns out Sunnyvale Estates HOA wasn't the ironclad dictatorship Vanessa claimed. Only 60% of homeowners had actually signed the covenants. And my uncle's property? Never recorded. Legally. They had about as much authority over my tomatoes as they did over the moon. But the real gold came when I dug into ownership records. The crown jewel of the neighborhood, the massive Spanish-style mansion at the end of the cul-de-sac where Vanessa held court, hosted her emergency board meetings, and parked her leased Range Rover, wasn't hers. It belonged to the Whitaker Family Trust. No. Wait. My family trust. The one my uncle had quietly set up years ago as an investment. Vanessa had been renting it for 3 years through a property management company. Paying late. And using the address to run her little empire. She was terrorizing the neighborhood from a house she didn't even own. I sat on my back patio that night, sipping a beer and watching the sunset paint the stucco gold. And I smiled for the first time in months. The woman who called me a threat to property values was paying me rent every month. Poetic doesn't even cover it. I kept playing dumb. When the third notice arrived demanding I rip out my garden or face a lien on my house, I simply replied with a polite email, "Thank you for your concern. I'll look into it." Meanwhile, I started connecting dots with the neighbors she'd already bullied. Old Mr. Kowalski, whose American flag had been too large according to Vanessa, showed me the $800 fine he'd paid rather than fight. The young couple 2 doors down had been threatened with legal action because their toddler's plastic swing set was not in approved earth tones. And single mom Lisa had been dragged through a rumor campaign after she dared to park her work van, with her cleaning business logo, in her own driveway. We started a group chat called the Tomato Underground. No drama. Just screenshots, dates, and evidence. Every time Vanessa sent another violation, we added it to the pile. She was getting bolder, convinced she was untouchable. Then she made her first real mistake. One Thursday evening, my security cameras caught her handyman, some sketchy guy in a white van, sneaking into my backyard at 2 a.m. By morning, my tomato plants were trampled, the soil salted, and a dead rat placed neatly on my patio table like a warning gift. She'd gone full mafia gardener. I didn't call the cops immediately. I called my lawyer instead. And I waited. The escalation hit fever pitch when Vanessa called an emergency HOA meeting to address the growing threat in the neighborhood. Translation, me. The community clubhouse was packed. She stood at the front in her power pastel, wielding a laser pointer like a weapon, showing photos of my backyard like it was a crime scene. Neighbors, we cannot allow this kind of disregard to spread, she said. Voice dripping artificial sweetener. Property values are at stake. Our children's futures are at stake. I'm only doing this for the community. A few people nodded. Most looked uncomfortable. I sat in the back row, calm as still water. When she opened the floor for comments, I stood up. Vanessa, I said pleasantly, I have a question. Does the HOA have any authority over properties not covered by the original covenants? Her smile froze. Of course we do. It's in the bylaws. Interesting. I pulled out a folder and projected the first document onto the screen behind her. Because according to county records, my property was never subject to those covenants. And while we're on the subject of records, the room went dead silent as the next slide appeared, ownership documents for her mansion. Funny thing about public records. They show that the house you've been living in, the one you use as HOA headquarters, is actually owned by a trust. My trust. You've been renting it, Vanessa, for 3 years. And according to the lease agreement my uncle drafted, tenants are prohibited from operating businesses from the property, running unauthorized short-term rentals on other homes in the neighborhood. And, here's my favorite, engaging in activities that disturb the peaceful enjoyment of other residents. Her face went through every stage of grief in under 5 seconds. First denial. Then the delicious wide-eyed panic. Then pure, unfiltered rage. You're lying, she hissed. Voice cracking. This is harassment. I'll sue you for defamation. I smiled. I recorded this meeting. By the way, audio and video. Perfectly legal in California on my own property. Well, technically the community clubhouse is common area. But the board approved the cameras last year. You approved them. Actually. The room erupted. Mr. Kowalski started slow clapping. Lisa stood up and said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You told everyone I was running a brothel out of my cleaning van. Vanessa. A brothel. The handyman sabotage footage played next. Then the screenshots of her threatening texts. Then the list of her own short-term rentals, for properties she was secretly operating without permits. All in violation of the very rules she weaponized against everyone else. By the time I slid the official 30-day eviction notice across the table, Vanessa looked like she'd been hit by her own Range Rover. "You can't do this," she whispered. "All the fake sweetness gone." Her hands were shaking so badly the papers rattled. "I already did," I said quietly. "And for the record, those tomatoes tasted amazing." The aftermath was swift and brutal in the most satisfying way. Vanessa tried one last desperate play, showing up at the county offices with an envelope full of cash to discuss my supposed violations. The zoning inspector was wearing a wire. Turns out bribing public officials is frowned upon even in sunny California. She was gone within the month. The mansion sat empty for a while. Then I sold it to a nice retired couple who actually liked gardens. The HOA? We dissolved the toxic parts and replaced them with actual reasonable guidelines voted on by real homeowners. No more pastel dictators. The Tomato Underground became the Sunnyvale Neighborhood Association, emphasis on neighborhood, not association. And me? I still grow tomatoes. Bigger ones now. Sometimes I leave a few on Vanessa's old doorstep when new tenants move in. Just a friendly reminder. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. And probably keeps a lot of you watching these stories. Was Vanessa really the villain for just enforcing the rules, or was she always just a bully hiding behind bylaws? And more importantly, who's the real threat to a community? The guy growing tomatoes? Or the woman willing to destroy lives to protect her little kingdom of beige? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've got your own HOA horror story, tell it. Because the more we talk about this stuff, the harder it gets for the next Vanessa to hide. See you in the next one.